No stranger standing there could see any of what Rhett saw in the cotton fields. No, indeed. He did not really think about it. Did not think about it at all. Did not have to think about it. All of that and things unexplainable, inexplicable were in his blood, his guts, and in the very marrow of his bones. In every fiber of his being, Rhett Butler was a true Southerner. Every true Southerner knows cotton in the South are spiritually, physically, and in the Southern mind, mentally joined forever. God brought cotton and the South together, and no man can ever put them asunder. From springtime to harvest, from season to season, until the end of time, cotton and the good earth and the people upon it that possess it and tend it will remain. Rhett heard a soft step behind him on the veranda, and he smelled Scarlett's favorite perfume. Not sure what she wore. In this day and age, it would probably be Red Door, which smells a little bit different on every woman for some reason. Don't ask me why. He turned around with his most charming smile, a smile that melted the hearts of weaker women. He found himself looking into cold, determined, emerald green eyes, beautiful eyes, staring him down over the barrel of a .45 caliber Colt pistol, his very own pistol. He continued to smile as his guts were churning and his mind was racing. He was in very real danger. The pistol was loaded. He knew because he just cleaned and checked it earlier that morning, and he had locked it away. Or he thought he had. He slipped his hand into his pocket. His keys were gone. When he placed his hand in his pocket, she responded by cocking the pistol and speaking in a calm, icy voice. "Whatever you do, sir, do not take your hand out of your pocket unless you are ready to die." Scarlett was not 3 short steps away, just out of his reach. However, even out to 20 paces, she was a damn good shot with a pistol. He knew that very well. Inwardly, Rhett was cursing himself for being a careless fool. But he kept smiling and spoke to her in his most reassuring and charming voice. "My dear Miss Butler, my dear Mrs. Butler, you would not want to shoot an innocent man." As she held her aim dead on his heart, she replied, "I have never in my life met an innocent man. I know men. Most all are the same, needy, demanding, groping. But you Yankees have a smell about you, a smell I don't care for, like hate and fear and death." Her nostrils flared as she spoke, as if she could smell him as well as she could see him. Her eyes never blinked, and her hand remained steady as she held the pistol aimed at his chest. I love the smell of a man, one who comes up out of the field with the honest dirt and sweat of life and work upon him. I love the smell of a man, tobacco, leather, and perhaps a little bourbon mingled with the lusty essence of a man. She paused, remembering, then continued with venom. I love the smell of a man, but I cannot stand the stench of a chicken-stealing Yankee. You Yankees have been here before. There's nothing left to steal. So just keep your hand in your pocket, turn around and march down those steps and off this place now. Rhett made one of the biggest mistakes of his life. He reached out with his free hand and spoke to her kindly and calmly with what he hoped sounded like reassuring authority. "Scarlett, darling, let's just have that gun." The loud crack of the pistol firing interrupted him. The bullet chipped a piece of marble facade from the column that he was standing near, and the sharp edge of the fragmented stone whacked Rhett on the side of his neck, just behind and below his right ear, leaving a nasty gash that began to bleed immediately. He grabbed the wound and below his right, he grabbed the wound with his free hand and cursed aloud. The spent shell ricocheted off the column and wound across the front yard toward the cotton field, and the jagged, bloody chunk of side fell at Rhett's feet. He did not take his other hand out of his pocket, and he remained silent as he eyed his crazy wife. She is worse than her father ever was. His insanity was passive, rather harmless. This woman is completely unpredictable and obviously dangerous, but what a woman she is. He knew very well that she could have killed or maimed him for life. She hit exactly where she aimed. Even in her state of insane hatred, she had chosen to fire a warning, close enough to do damage, much more damage than he knew at the time, as a sharp 1-inch sliver of the stone had pierced the right side of his throat just below the jawbone, his jawbone. The point of that projectile was lodged in an arterial vein. He was very much in danger of bleeding to death. Scarlett repeated her demand. "Perhaps you did not hear me. I told you to leave. I suggest you do so quickly." Rhett backed slowly across the porch, keeping his eyes on her grim face. That look he had seen before. Murderous. She never wavered, but held the pistol dead on his heart, inching forward as he moved backwards. When he reached the top of the steps, he reached down slowly and gripped the wrought-iron railing with his bloody hand and began to back down. Removing his hand from the side of his neck released the pressure he was unconsciously applying to that sliver of stone stuck in his flesh, pricking that vein, and he began to bleed profusely, like the proverbial stuck hog. He was beginning to be lightheaded. He was losing a lot of blood, and he could feel the hot stickiness down the side of his neck. He was fighting to stay up. When he reached the bottom, she was at the top, staring him down with those cool green eyes, the pistol still on target. Her hair was dark and flowing, with only the slightest hint of gray around her temples. She wore a dark green velvet housecoat with ermine collar, one that he had bought for her in New York New York City, because she had liked it so much. He remembered how she had looked then when she wrapped it around herself, laughing like a schoolgirl, telling him how much she loved him, that he spent too much money on her, but she did need it to keep her warm in those cold Yankee hotels that he insisted on staying in. He could not recall her ever looking more beautiful than she did now, standing there with his own pistol pointed at him. He saw her bare feet, and he wondered if she was naked under the housecoat. The cold morning air did not make her shake at all. A commotion of hurrying people poured out of the house, but Scarlett did not seem to notice. She was focused and very determined. Will Benton was the first to arrive, limping rather quickly on his peg leg through the open front door. He crossed the porch, thumping and exclaiming in his South Cracker twang, What in tarnation y'all shooting at, Miss Scarlett?" When he got to the edge of the porch, he saw the bleeding Rhett Butler. He froze and stared, speechless. Sue Ellen arrived next. When she saw the blood, she drew a gasping breath, and true to her nature, she let out a scream that would surely wake everyone within a mile who had not heard the pistol shot. The scream brought Scarlett around to the real world. She looked with disdain at Sue Ellen, who was white-faced with horror, staring stupidly at the revolver in Scarlett's hand. Scarlett looked at the pistol, trying to remember. Why did she have it in her hand? She looked at Will, who was looking at her with a mixture of pity, disbelief, and concern in his washed-out gray eyes. Pity would have normally angered Scarlett. She seemed confused. Then a look of remembrance came upon her face, and she looked unflinchingly into Will's eyes and said, rather calmly, "I've done committed murder again." To be continued. I think that was take 8, wasn't it, Kit Kat? Now, I'm gonna have to throw you outside because you keep scratching on me. You need to lay down and go to sleep. That's what you need to do.